Thank you for staying with us. The federal government has revealed that no fewer than 21 local government areas in 10 states and the Federal Capital Territory have been submerged by flood as a result of heavy rainfall in the past few days. This was revealed by the Minister of Water Resources and Sanitation, Mr. Utsev, during an interaction with journalists in Abuja. Mr. Utsef says the annual flood outlook by the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency released in April had predicted that 148 local government areas in 31 states fell within the high flood risk areas. Some of the affected states are Adamawa, Akwa, Ibom, Anambra, Bauchi, Bayelsa, Benue, Borno, Cross River. Others are Delta, Ebonyi, Edo, Imo, Jigawa, Kaduna, Kano, Katsina, and Kebbi. States likely to be affected have been advised to take precautionary measures to prevent deaths and other disasters. Well, joining us via Zoom is the Executive Director, Rainfall Development Initiative, Philip Jakpor. Philip, good morning. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning. I'm happy to be here.
When you look at the papers this morning is also talking about this matter of flooding. 18 states on red alert as flood kills 15, displaces over 16,000 in just 1 week. Another paper here talking about danger, flood, cholera threatening Lagos, Ogun, Delta, FCT, others. And an expert is saying human activity is responsible for the climate change effect that we are witnessing now. Talk to us from your perspective when you compare what we are facing now with other years that we have witnessed this heavy downpour and flooding. What makes this time quite concerning?
Well, I think in previous years, we got these warnings and we saw the catastrophic effects of these floods, I think starting from 2012. At this point, I don't think Nigeria should be talking so much about just the impact of climate change, because of course the impact of climate change is just the rains that are unusually heavy. Other countries are also experiencing different kind of impacts of climate change. But the human part of what we're experiencing is the abdication of responsibility by government. Because if we all must notice, once these heavy rains fall, after some time, the waters run off. And in Lagos, the incident last week is reflective of what I'm talking about. Yes, there was flooding in when you are approaching the Third Mainland Bridge. There was flooding in different communities, except of course for Lekki, but the water runs off. So all we will need to do is to ensure that the drains are open, the canals are cleared, and I think the effect will be minimal. But unfortunately, we have not seen this. All we hear are the alarms. The NIMET and the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency have been very consistent since 2012 in warning. And I think the warning about what is happening now, we started getting it in April. But it's only now that we have started hearing state government talk about, okay, opening up the canals, okay, people should evacuate. The warnings were for these governments to take action. But unfortunately, like previous years, we've seen a pattern of abdication of responsibility.
But let's perhaps take a pause for a bit. When you look at what Lagos State did, by demolishing some structures that were on this routes where waters were supposed to flow, the channels for waters to flow, and also for the canals to be free so they can be free flow of some of these waters. We saw how the kind of reactions we got from persons who were angry that the state government was taking this kinds of decision.
Well, naturally, you get that kind of reaction because most of these people we are talking about ask the question, who gave the permits in the first place? Who gave these people the permits in the first place to build? So the reaction you are getting, because if someone buys a land and at that point, or before the person buys the land, and the person is told that you are building on floodplains, I think you are not going to get this kind of reaction. But what we have is that there's collusion between some public officials who are in those agencies of government also raising the alarm now and doing those demolitions. And that's why the outcry is louder than you could imagine. So if government is really serious about governance, taking this responsibility from the beginning, it's about planning. Now people are, go to the entire Lekki axis. People are building on, areas that they are not supposed to, green areas. What is happening? That's why Lekki is like a bucket. You have the Atlantic on one side and you have the lagoon on the other side. So people are in the middle. The waters that are supposed to flow into the lagoon are not going to the lagoon. The waters that are supposed to flow into the Atlantic are not going to the Atlantic. And then you also have some constructions that are, I consider, dangerous constructions, happening in that region. Who is permitting these things? So if you permit and then people build, spend millions of naira to build, and then you wake up one day and you say you want to demolish it, you are going to have those kind of outcry. So government should be serious about governance. And then, of course, the issue of the canal. So we only started hearing initially when NIMET gave the warning, I think about 2 months ago, there was some drama going on, the opening up of canal. Then after that, we heard nothing. Since last week, we've started hearing that, okay, the state government is doing this or doing that. So it is the perception of people about government and what government itself is doing. These are the things that is causing this kind of outcry you are talking about.
Well, if you look at the Environment Commissioner in Lagos State, they already said that they are going to ensure that they bring down some of the structures that are obstructing the waterways. And that was in reaction to someone who made a post on Twitter, calling out the Lagos State government for, one way or the other, ethnicizing Lagos State government's, action in bringing down some of the structures, saying that it is targeted towards certain, ethnic group. So how do you think they can do this without having to be named or tagged as being against other ethnic group in Lagos State? And with the NIMET, raising the alarm, which you mentioned, because they've actually, said that we should expect increase of 30% of rain, coming this season. So are you saying that the states, apart from Lagos State, were not actually ready, or did the rain actually come, rather too early?
Well, to your last question, I think it has been a steady pattern. Even in 2012, when we had these very catastrophic floods, which I think affected about 21 states then, the government then set up a committee of, governors, and nothing happened. So at this stage, we're also hearing the same thing. Committees are set up. You are also hearing government say they are going to demolish structures. And of course, some demolition takes place. But as they demolish, also, lands have been allocated to people in other places that are also, floodplains. So this thing has to be done with utmost seriousness. I think some people benefit from, I'll call them disaster capitalists. When these floods happen, okay, they move to a community, donate some things, and then half of those things miss. If not, this is how many years down the line. When the 2012 incident happened, I was in Lokoja and different parts of the country where these floods happened. And it has been the same thing. The only thing that has changed, and I repeat, is that NIMET has been very, very proactive. We get the warnings when we should, and they happen 2 or 3 months before these things start happening. But you see, we are focusing on the floods now, as a result of the rain. Nobody is talking about the possibility, and I think that's from the Ministry of Environment, we should start hearing that. Nobody is talking about the possibility that we are going to also have unusually heavy rains in Cameroon, and the Lagdo Dam is going to be opened. Nobody we're not hearing anything about that. It's going to be maybe 1 or 2 days before they release water to now start hearing that, people should evacuate. These things, it just shows the kind of people that we are. If we have people at the end of our affairs who believe in this country, who love this country and love its people, I think they'll be thinking proactively. But unfortunately, it is, the routine, year in, year out, the same alarm. And then, of course, it is also very, very important because all the state governments are talking about people should evacuate. People should evacuate. And they are not intervening in the sense of building some shelters on high ground. Because the people you are telling to evacuate, where do you want to move them to? The government should be seen to be doing something. That is the emergency actions we are talking about. By now, we should be hearing state governments talking about speed boats available to move around communities where people are going to be trapped so that they are going to be able to evacuate them, or maybe choppers that they're going to use to, evacuate people who are not going to be trapped in their communities. The kind of things we should say, you just say people evacuate, And then these things are also going to complicate the cholera, crisis that we have at the moment, because many communities are flooded. The wells have been overrun with flood waters. So the cholera that we are actually fighting today, we're going to have more incidents. And it's very, very unfortunate because these things, like I said, we continue to hear with climate change. Climate change is all about the rain that's unusually heavy. The climate change has nothing to do with, building buffers, clearing the drains, opening up the canals. Climate change has nothing to do with that. It is human failure. So that's what we should tackle. The government should stop talking about climate change causing it. Climate change causes it. What have you done? The question we are asking.
Now, talking about human activity, recently when the rains fell, we saw where someone on X posted the picture of a couple who came out to throw dustbin in the flood, perhaps believing that the floods will wash it away somewhere, and that is it. But the Lagos State government intervened, and we hear that I think they have been arrested or something like that. But talk to us about human activity that is also contributing to what we are seeing happening now. How aware are Nigerians with regards to what they need to know when it comes to issues like this?
Well, I think we have two levels, at the governmental level and then at the individual level, me and you. Government must show good example, first of all, by ensuring that lands are not allocated to people in areas that are supposed to assimilate floodwaters or green areas. Government has to show good example. Government also has to show good example in terms of enforcing the laws, penalties for despoiling the environment. That is very, very important. And then back that up with education, sensitization, going around communities, explaining to them that, look, if you dump this refuse here, it's going to affect your neighbor and it's going to come back to you. I don't think people who dump this waste are not conscious of what they are doing because they are not dumping the waste in their houses. They are dumping it outside. So if they do that and there's immediate sanction and, it is seen to be carried out and carried out, justly, I think many more people would, avoid those kind of things. So the laws are there. Let us enforce it and let it be seen to be enforced. And then government must show example by not doing the same thing for which you are sanctioning people.
Well, those who are waste collectors, for instance, in Lagos State, Lasema, I've been seeing different houses where their waste have not been, been picked up. Even in my own house too, have not been picked up. And when they were called, the response that they gave was because of the floods, they've not been able to access some areas. But certainly, my own area, they should be able to access it without the flood, outcry. So how do you see, waste collectors, also working in this emergency situation to ensure that some of these floods are not in turn washed away by these floods that they are trying to, also run away from?
Well, we're in the midst of this already. Most of what we are asking for are things that should have been done even before now. Those waste collectors we are talking about, even their vehicles are hazards to the environment because most times when they evacuate this waste, they also litter the environment, the smell, and most times their vehicles even broke down, most times in the middle of the street, everywhere where they collect this waste. I don't know. So we have to also look at the kind of waste collectors involved and the kind of equipment, trucks they use. But then, like I said, the excuses they are giving would have been better addressed if proactively the drainages have been opened before now. The flood last week, there were videos. You have a lot of social media videos.
Philip, they're talking about the activities of humans contributing to that, and you were talking about
Yeah, I hope we...
Loma.
Yeah, Loma. I wanted to say Loma rather than saying Lasema. I was even looking at, using the correct one.
We hear his back, yes.
Okay. So good to have you. I wanted to mention Loma then rather than saying Lasema. But you also mentioned Lagdo Dam, which, from which impacts were reeled, last year. And then this year, we don't know how it's going to be. We don't know whether they're going to release the dam, because the rains is the issue of the rain is a global affair now. India, Germany, Pakistan, and so many other countries are also being affected by this flooding, and at a very high level, high intensity. On your dam in Ogun State, we're not sure whether it's going to be opened as well. And this definitely leads to somewhere in our backyard here where we have houses submerged and people displaced. So what exactly do you think can be done in the immediate to forestall this kind of, incidents? Maybe the buffer dam, up north probably had been done or not. We don't even know. We don't even have the information.
I think this question is a very good one. Now, you are in the dark about the Onyo Dam, about the Lagdo Dam, and I am also in the dark. Now, who is supposed to give us this kind of information? Like I mentioned earlier, we are talking about the floods now. The floods we are experiencing are already catastrophic. Now imagine if the Lagdo Dam is also opened. Now, last year, I think, when we were talking about this flooding incident, I think the Senate mentioned something about the Dastin Hausa Dam, which Nigeria was supposed to build to assimilate flood waters, ameliorate the release of waters from the Lagdo Dam. Today, we are not hearing anything anymore. The Senate should be telling us what has happened between them. And as the Dasin Hausa Dam being built, we don't even know. Nobody is saying anything. Everybody is just hand up free. Committee is set up, and the committees, after some time, you hear nothing. So that is what we should be, because the minister should be telling us now that, the rain situation in Cameroon, we are monitoring it. We are in touch with the authorities in Cameroon, so that whenever they are going to release waters, we will alert people and will have taken these measures or not. We are not hearing anything. So it is indicative, like I said, of the kind of people we have in government, people who, don't love this country. Because if you love this country, you love its people, you'll be proactive in thinking, you think ahead. And that's what they do in other parts of the world where you have flooding, where you have, in US, where you have this yearly hurricane. It is planned for. So when they say, for instance, people should evacuate, you hear that they have discussed with about 1,000 hotels to take people who are going to be evacuated. And then you see men on ground moving from one place to the other to ensure that nobody is left behind. And then there's announcement consistently. We watch it on CNN, we see it. So those are people who love their nation, who love their people. Because people are going to die. You mentioned in your report that about 15 people died. These are human beings. The action or inaction of some people is what is responsible for that. So if you think in that line that, look, what I do or what I do not do is going to affect people, it's going to affect the economy. More people are going to have cholera. Some people are going to die just because of one or two things that you and I may not have done or did wrongly. So these are, if we have those kind of people in government, I think these issues we are talking about, we'll be able to address them. Look at the economic losses last week. A lot of people, their cars, destroyed. Cars in water, houses submerged. The houses, even if the waters have receded, the integrity of those houses, is questionable. A lot of people did not go to their work. Look at the economic losses. So if you think in that line, that look, it's going to have multiplier effect. It's going to affect me. It's going to affect my neighbor. It's going to affect my friend. You start thinking, like I said, proactively. But so we have people in government who don't love the nation, who don't love their people. If not, this has been happening. See, I know it's been happening for years, but it has been more prevalent since 2012. So everybody knows it. So they should stop talking about climate change. Climate change is what the heavy rains.
All right, Philip, it means that from all you have said, it means that our approach towards this whole matter of having rainfalls, climate change, and flooding is as a result of we're not fully understanding the implication of what is it that we are seeing, even though we have witnessed this over 10 years. Because you have talked about the matter of cholera, which is a health issue. You have talked about the economic aspect to this, where a lot of persons could not go to their offices, could not open their shops. And then we also have the agricultural issue, where we had a number of farms swept away by the floods, and then we could not, get the produce that we needed at the time. And now we are still going through that, where a lot of farmers can still not go to their farms. We are still grappling with security challenges, and then we are having matters of flooding, where some persons are saying, perhaps we need to look at it also from the security perspective. Speak to us with all of this dimension, a holistic approach of looking at this matter and also dealing with it, because the rains are already here, but something has to be done that perhaps will last us for the whole hog at the end of the day. Can state governments or subnationals really handle this alone?
Well, if we have to talk of the security aspect of it, I always say something, and I think it's very, very important, and of course it's very relatable to the way Cameroon releases water, for instance, from the Lagdo Dam, which has not happened yet. And I always say this, that this issue is also a security issue, because we don't pray for it to at war with Cameroon. All they need to do is release water. Half of Nigeria will be underwater, and then they don't need to shoot anything. They've fully incapacitated Nigeria. So the security implications, everybody is involved in this. So everybody should think. Now, the question was that, is it that they don't understand the implications? I don't think people who are talking about don't understand the implications. But maybe there are no sanctions if you don't do what you should do. If your house is leaking, where I am, if it's leaking, I will quickly fix it. And when I hear there's going to be heavy rains, I'm going to do more. So this is our nation. So you have to look at it in that light, that this is our nation. But unfortunately, those at the helm of affairs are not reasoning in this line, because some of them, they live in places where, these impacts are not felt, and, So, but what we are saying is this, there should be sanctions for these kind of things if people who are supposed to do their jobs are not doing it. I mentioned something earlier. People build on floodplains. Look at what is happening in Lekki. You have estates, you have heaven estates, hell estates, estates everywhere. People build without drainage. Who permitted those things in the first place? Are people, collecting money and turning their eyes the other way around? It's not like what was happening when we had building collapse. Doing things that, the agencies of government that are supposed to ensure that you are building, there's integrity of what you are doing. So for these failures, who is taking responsibility for it? That's the question. So if nobody is taking responsibility, everybody looks away. And that's what's happening. So by now, we expect the president to give a matching order to the Minister of Environment, for instance, or those responsible for the building of the Dakina outside dam, that in the next 2-3 years, we want that dam up and running. And so those are the kind of things. So when that happens, we will not come here next year and be in the dark, because you don't know what's going to happen with the you don't know the status of the Dakina outside dam. I don't know. We only know that the Senate talked about it last year, that they are going to do something about it. What has been done, where the discussion has ended, nobody knows. So everyone is in the dark, everybody for themselves. That's what is happening in this country. So it is time we continue to ask these questions and, ask that those who fail to do what they should do, which is responsible for the deaths, the economic dislocation, to take full responsibility for it.
Right. Well, when you mentioned Cameroon releasing their water, especially when Nigeria goes to war with Cameroon just for them to release water, they are not part of ECOWAS member states, and you don't want to tell them what to do in order to face us in situations like that. That's just by the way.
We don't pray for it.
God forbid. So how do you think, because there are some people currently reading from the impact of, the removal of fuel subsidy, the economic impact and all of that, and we are facing food shortages leading to several crises and all of that. And how do you think this flooding has impacted this kind of people, which will in turn lead to anxiety and then lead to mental health situation for so many people? Looking at what WHO says that 1 in 4 Nigerians suffer from mental health disorders. So how do you think they can help buffer this situation for them, especially from within their own community, their community leaders and the closest government to them, which is the local government chairman?
Unfortunately, even the community leader may also be a victim of what is happening. So the chain of events give all of us mental rundown. Don't think ourselves even talking are not, you have people in those communities. So dislocation, a lot of people in those communities will reach you, can we move to your place, and those kind of things. So it is a hydra-headed monster that may consume us if we don't do the right thing. We still, the predictions, don't forget, there's still going to be the monster flood. It's not yet, we're not yet there. This is like the smoke, the fire is still ahead. This is just July. So this is going to be for the long haul. Ultimately, we're going to have it till October or November. So what NIMET has warned about, what the Nigeria Hydrological Services Agency has warned about, I think, even though this is going to be hard up, the states should now jump into the fray and look at this beyond, because what they are going to be asking for now is ecological funds. The little things they can do, if they do these little things, I'm sure we are not going to be experiencing these things. One agency of government warned, I think, in your news, that the tide in the rivers increasing.
Yes.
The tide. Yeah, so their citizens should now be asking, the citizens of those states mentioned, that what are you doing? What are you going to put in place to ameliorate? Because you cannot fight this thing really. Sea level is rising globally because of the melting ice caps, warming of the seas. So what are we doing? What can we do to make our people, feel the impact least? So
that's a fine place to leave the conversation.
Yes.
That's a fine place to leave the conversation because our time is up. We must thank you, Executive Director, Rainfall Development Initiative, Philip Jakpor, for your time on the program. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.